You're with the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thanks for staying with us. While safe spaces for the LGBTQ plus community in Cleveland and Columbus seem like a given today, that definitely was not the case a generation or two ago. In pretty recent history, one of the first and only spots in Columbus for lesbians to mingle and be themselves was a place called Jack's, which was eventually renamed Summit Station. That space is the focus of a new documentary called Free Beer Tomorrow, which will premiere at the Cleveland International Film Festival later today. First, we'll see a clip from the film, and then we'll get into an interview with the co-directors.
I didn't know that there was a place that would accept a person like me, and this woman doesn't have any idea of what she really did for this community and how many lives she saved in this community.
I'm also from Ohio, from an Appalachian community, and coming to Columbus was something that saved my life, and I never expected to stay here longer than 6 months, and it's been 20 plus years, and it's because of Summit Station, Lester Singleton, the magic that happened at that bar, and the ripple effect goes on across so many generations.
That scene from the documentary, again titled Free Beer Tomorrow, shows how Jack's and Summit Station were recognized by the city of Columbus with a historical marker that was back in 2022. So with me now to talk about the documentary are the co-directors of the film. We have Julia Applegate with us on the phone. Julia, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We also have Lester Singleton with us. Lester, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
I want to start the conversation by asking each of you to go back in time with us and talk to us about how people found out about the bar. It was originally Jack's A Go-Go, then it became Jack's, which was when it transformed into the space for the lesbian community. Lester, let me ask you first, how did people find out about it, and what was it like to be there in the early days?
It was really a word of mouth type of thing. The way I found out is there were older girls on my basketball team that asked myself and a couple other friends if we wanted to go hang out with them. Of course, they were seniors, we were not, and we said yes. We got a little bit out of town and they told us where we were going and told us if we didn't want to go, we could get out of the car and walk back home, or we were sworn to secrecy. Being a curious person who loved everybody and had no judgment, I decided to go. I was on the better half of 15 at that time. My friend happened to be dating the door person, and we got to go there. And it was an amazing, amazing place to walk in and immediately not feel odd. And I can't, unless you've had an experience as a marginalized person walking into a space where you're one of a few, then you can't really appreciate just the overwhelming affirmation that it provided. And even though we were underage, it was very understood that if you got out of hand, if you, got drunk or did things like that, you would not be invited back, allowed back until you were 21. And even then, you might have to do some talking. It was taken very seriously that you knew what a special gift you were giving. And Cleta, who was the owner at the time, also understood that if there wasn't any place for the younger of us to go, then we'd probably end up in a whole bunch of other kind of trouble. And so you just went there. There were a lot of, at the time that I was going, 74, second wave of feminism is really taking a hold. Gay rights is taking a hold. People were coming out and speaking out, and it was just a fantastic time to see folks, in particular, women uh, fight back.
Julia, how about for you? What would you describe the atmosphere like at that time for gay women in Columbus?
Well, I came into the scene in 1993, and at the time there was a big dance club downtown called Wall Street, and there was then also Jack's and maybe one other place, Slammers. But there was something. What was special about Jack's was that it was a place where you felt at home. It even if it there could be 8 people there or 80 people there, and you were going to be connecting with everybody. It wasn't a place of anonymity or I don't know. There was just something about community that was there in a way that wasn't present in the other lesbian or gay spaces at the time. And that was really important for me as I was coming out, becoming more secure in my lesbian identity and living in a new town, to be in a place where I felt like I could just be me and meet friends very quickly.
People wanted to know your name. They wanted to know who you were, and they wanted to make sure you knew you had a friend.
Something that was talked about in the documentary, Lester, is the intersection of race and sexuality, and the bar being a safe place not only for gay women, but also people of color. I'm wondering, Lester, is that something you can expand on a bit, what that was like?
It really was. I mean, I'm from Zanesville, Ohio. It's no big secret that the Ku Klux Klan was very present and visible in my growing up and in and about town. And so to go to a place that welcomed, if anyone said anything off cuff about anyone of color, like that was the first place I had been to hang out with, um, with Latinx folks, with API folks. Of course, we weren't saying that then for biracial people. And if anyone said anything off cuff, they were immediately, and it wasn't just a shoot down. It wasn't that. But you were immediately, someone got you to the side and had a conversation with you and helped you understand that your thinking needed to be broader and that no forms of hate were going to be tolerated. It wasn't always easy, but it was the expectation. And so I kind of grew up in that. It would be later that I really realized that those same isms that operate in quote unquote heterosexual world or um, you know normal folks or whatever you want to say. It would be later that I would learn about the nuances and about the microaggressions. But there was a concentrated effort. And it was honestly one of the only bars that had a person of color behind the bar, of the gay bars that were there. And so, and that had always been the case.
Mm. Julia, Lester mentioned this a bit just a moment ago, but the activism of the time. Can you tell us, how did the overall activism of the LGBT community play into the existence and the community feeling at Jack's?
So from the very beginning, there was that space was a place where all kinds of things came together. So it was softball, activism, community planning, fundraisers. And so I think when you go back to the early 1970s and recognize that Stonewall Rebellion and civil rights movement, women's liberation, that the women that were gathering in this bar were plotting. They were sitting down in, booths and with a couple beers thinking about their oppression and what they could do about it. And they did that when it came to violence against women. They worked for families who are experiencing violence. They did work with the HIV positive community, trying to raise money for men who are dying of HIV. There were politicians. The first lesbian that ran for city council came and did a campaign visit at Jack's and Summit Station because she knew she needed those people to vote for her. There were breast cancer awareness campaigns. So it was a place where activism was very much cultivated and encouraged. And out of that place grew social service agencies that have taken care of women around these issues for decades now. And people don't realize that there was a time when places like domestic violence shelter were not in existence. And it took women gathering together and using their own strength to make these places formalized and into institutions. But it used to just be very informal networking and activism that was people helping people. We call it mutual aid now. But it was very rampant in the bar.
This is a question for both of you, and I'll start with Lester. Throughout the documentary, we see several times where we're seeing sort of a confessional style interview from the both of you. And in one of those, you all talk about what were you thinking even putting this documentary together when this is something you didn't have experience in, but something moved you to do it. Lester, what was it for you that was so moving that you just had to find some way to pick up a camera and tell the story of Free Beer Tomorrow?
I'm a storyteller. I come from a family of storytellers. My great grandmother was very involved in the civil rights movement, was a SNCC member, was a Southern Christian Ladies leadership. And so, and history and education were extremely important to her, extremely important to my family. The way we learn, I come from freedom schools. I was alive and a wide-eyed child when you were expected by grade school to really understand your importance to the community. So, and it didn't matter, I think, as a person, as a marginalized being, how do we do what we do? And we're hillbillies. How do you do what you do? What's the problem? Figure it out, and we're gonna work it out with that ingenuity and make it happen. We don't expect anyone to come and help us out. We expect we're going to do it ourselves. And so, I mean, it's just natural for me. If someone tells me that I'm unable to do something or something can't be done, my first question really is not being combative, but it really is, well, why not?
Hmm.
And once I know why not, well, then we just have to figure out, what's the solution to that why not? To that why not?
And that
And
that one organization that you mentioned, Lester, SNCC, that stands for Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. So thank you for sharing that. And Julia, as we start to wrap things up here, what was it for you that moved you so much to create this documentary?
It started because we were securing a historical marker for that space. And in doing that, we tracked down people who were patrons of the bar from the very beginning. And one of the people that we found was P.D. Brown, who owned the bar. And we went and recorded an oral history at the Ohio History Connection. And listening, just knowing that these stories had never been captured and knowing that there were so many women who had virtually the same story. This bar saved their life. It was everything to them. It felt like it happened to me. Like it just became one of those things where this story needs to be told. Like Lester said, we're both Appalachian. If the front door is not open, you kick open the basement window. You find a way in. The no is not an option. And so we figured it out. I had friends who had made films, and I knew that you can make a film. Everyone can make a film. So the question was really how good of a film can we make, and that was really dependent upon money. But it really felt like it was very much meant to be.
And I have to ask, just for the people who may not be aware, hopefully people will catch this tonight at the Cleveland International Film Festival. But Julia, very quickly, where does the name Free Beer Tomorrow come from?
Well, when Peter took ownership of the bar in 1980, one of the first things she did was place a big neon sign over the length of the bar that said Free Beer Tomorrow. And of course, the joke works because the light is always on. Tomorrow never comes. But that's, her sense of humor. And when we started the project, we told her we needed to name this thing and threw out that as an idea. And she said, yes, that's what I want it to be.
There you go. Simple and sweet. Simple as sweet as that. Thank you very much for talking with us today. Lester Singleton and Julia Applegate, co-directors of Free Beer Tomorrow, which shows tonight at 5 p.m. at the Cleveland International Film Festival. Thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
Sookie.
That wraps up our show for today. If you missed any part of the show, it'll rebroadcast tonight at 9 on 89.7 WKSU. You can also find The Sound of Ideas wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. To get the last word on today's topics, you can email us at soi@ideastream.org. Yesterday, we talked about the rule of law and 2 former Ohio Supreme Court justices speaking out on its importance to preserving democracy. An audience member emailed in during the show asking where to find information about judicial candidates, and Laura emailed in response to that, saying the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that presents information about candidates. Thank you for that tip, Laura. Tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas, we're talking about how Ohio will finally be represented in a Michelin Guide, which is great news for foodies in the area, and we'll highlight Northeast Ohio's Filipino food scene in our latest installment of The Menu. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you very much for keeping the conversation going. I'll talk to you again tomorrow here on The Sound of Ideas. Have a great day, everybody.